Chapter 2 is the second installment of the newly rebooted It series that's remaking the It miniseries from the 1990s, but also just another adaptation of the It book. This one is obviously adapting the second half of that. The kids from the first movie have now grown up. It's been 27 years since Pennywise attacked them when they were kids, and since they pushed them away, they've gone on to have their own adult lives, but then suddenly Mike, the only one who stayed behind in Derry, Maine, calls them all back because Pennywise has been resurfacing and killing new kids. So they all come back together, and they have to remember their childhood, they have to remember their past in order to defeat Pennywise for good. I liked the first chapter of It back in 2017. I thought they did a really good job with that film. And though it wasn't a perfect horror film or anything, they did a really good job with it to the point where I was excited to see how they were going to handle part 2. And with the same creative team involved, with the same director, the cast looking great, I thought this was going to be in really good hands. And the trailers made this look fantastic, like just really freaky, really bizarre, and just so zany. I was so excited to see this film. And at the end of the day, this movie can't be any worse than the part 2 of the It miniseries, because that has not aged well at all, save for Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise. So I went into this movie really excited. I was so hyped to see this film. It was in my top 5 most anticipated for the rest of this year, and I walked out a little mixed on it, but I thought I was still going to be positive with it. But thanks to Hurricane Dorian, it prevented me from recording my review where I gave that kind of positive grade. But after kind of thinking to myself, okay, since I can't record the video yet and Dorian's storming out there, I might as well talk out the review. Sometimes that's how I do it to plan these. I kind of talk it out to myself. And the more I talked to myself, the more I kind of thought about things, and I was like, you know what? This movie really let me down. And I don't even think it's really all that good. I could watch it again, maybe. I kind of do have an interest to see it again, just to kind of solidify where I'm at, but I really was disappointed by this film. This is a really big letdown right out of the gate of the fall movie season. Let's talk about the things that did work first. First of all, once again, Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. He is a fantastic actor, and he as Pennywise has just solidified himself as the only Pennywise in my eyes. Tim Curry, he did a really goofy, fun job on that miniseries, but Bill Skarsgård really brings a lot to this performance that I just really enjoyed. It was great to see him back in the clown makeup. He did another great job. They did a lot of great things with Pennywise in this one. And Andy Muschietti's direction, back from the first film obviously, he did another great job with this. There's a lot of unique horror ideas that they have here, and it leads to some of the scares really paying off pretty well, and I thought this movie at times got really good in what it was trying to do. The score by Benjamin Wallfisch, he came back from the first film too. He did another good job composing some really eerie music for this film, and I thought his work was once again utilized very well. He's kind of an up-and-coming composer that I've grown to really admire recently. The cinematography also looks very good. They capture everything well enough. There wasn't a moment where I thought it was too dark or I was confused by what was going on. Everything just was filmed perfectly here, so a lot of the sequences really got it right. And the third act of this film was perfect. Thematically, a lot of the themes of this film, a lot of the character arcs were really hitting, and it did lead to something where I was like, okay, a lot of this movie has problems, but they at least ended it on a pretty good note, because the third act just goes all out with its crazy horror stuff. But I thought they did a really good job utilizing it, and also utilizing a lot of these different characters. And everyone in the cast obviously does a great job. They have assembled a lot of talented people here to play these characters just 27 years later, and I thought all of them did a really good job in their performances. There wasn't one person where I was like, they're not bringing their A game to it, or this guy is just not taking it seriously. Like, everyone did a good job here. Two in particular. One, James Ranson as Eddie. He did a fantastic job of just collecting Jack Dylan Grazer's mannerisms and bringing that just 27 years later. He really did a great job bringing this new version of Eddie to life. But of course, everyone's talked about him, and I gotta do it too. Bill Hader is phenomenal here. If you haven't seen Barry, that already showed that he's got great range from just comedy acting and then to more serious one. This is a mixture of both. It's easily one of his best performances to date, and I really hope that Bill Hader takes on more roles like this that require this kind of acting from him, because he can be really funny, and he's got a lot of the best jokes of this film. Most of the jokes are coming from him, and the movie is surprisingly funny as a whole, but what really works about his character is that there's a lot of empathy you can have for him. There's certain things they reveal that you're kind of like, oh, that's what's been going on. And you kind of look at the first movie again in a new, different light now that this is now a thing. And you're kind of like, that actually kind of makes this character stronger. And even though Bill is supposed to be the main character, I'm mainly just attracted to Bill Hader's character and what his arc entailed. Unfortunately, though, as much as I really did dig the actors playing these characters, and a few people in particular really brought it, unfortunately, as a whole, this is where we're going to start segueing into the cons. Not all of the characters are perfectly written, and it's a little poorly developed at the beginning as well. When I found out this movie was going to be 2 hours and 49 minutes, not 3 hours, but pretty close, I kind of figured to myself, okay, well, they are picking up 27 years later, and we need character development time to see where these people are in life before they get the inevitable call from Mike. So I figured, okay, no harm, no foul, just give us some really good moments like that. But then I found out that the only reason this movie is really long is because they just had a lot of great ideas for horror sequences in Derry, Maine, and we need to show all of these scenes. And the intro with the new character reintroductions is very rushed, and to the point where it's not like you don't understand these characters, you do, because you've seen the first movie, and also they just give you the very basic information of what you need before they go off on their adventure. It literally very much so feels like they only wanted to be in Derry, Maine and didn't want to waste too much time.
I forgot to put this in the video because I'm stupid, but one thing that kind of proves the theory that they just wanted to rush into the other stuff as much as possible is that there's a moment where they meet at the restaurant and then Mike tells them what they got to do, and some of them are saying, no, we're out of here, we're packing our things and going, and then they cut back to these characters later after they leave, and they all show up at the same old Derry Inn, and they all barge into the place like, all right, let's pack up our stuff and get out. And it made me think, wait, you guys clearly just met for the first time in a while at the restaurant, but you were all conveniently staying at the same inn, and you didn't bump into each other while checking in or going out at the restaurant. Like, you clearly, like, maybe I can buy them not bumping into each other when they're checking in, but at least when they're leaving around the same time to meet up at the restaurant, at least, you don't have to have all of them meet up at the Derry Inn and then go to the restaurant. Just have a couple of them, or even make Richie Tozier have a joke like, oh, I didn't know we were all staying at the same inn, how convenient is that, or some joke like that, but they just didn't do it. It just breezed by so quickly, and it was just a really weird moment. That just kind of proves how rushed this entire film is, because they wanted to get to other stuff.
So certain things get glossed over very quickly. Like, there's a certain thing that you can kind of pick up on with Eddie, but they barely delve into that kind of trauma. They go on into something else about his character, but there's something in particular they set up that they don't really come back to, and it's almost also kind of set up in the first movie as well. You've got Mike Hanlon, who in the last film, they changed his character because in the miniseries, if you remember the miniseries, I think most people do, he was the historian. He knew all about the town's history, and then in the new movie, they switched that and they gave that role to Ben, and then Mike just became a kid who has to shoot sheep. But when I saw the first movie, I was like, okay, so Ben's now going to be the historian guy. He's going to be kind of trying to keep up tabs with the town. But then they just gave it back to Mike in this film anyways, so it just kind of led me to believe, like, what was the overall point of setting up in the first film that Ben is the one who likes being in the library and likes reading up on the town history. When they do a reveal that Mike has been living up in the attic of the library this whole time and he spent most of his time here, it would have been much more satisfying if that was Ben that we were seeing, because we've seen Ben in the library. He loves it there. Like, the librarian even asked him in the first movie, like, isn't it like summer? Shouldn't you be with your friends? He likes to be at the library. Mike, I mean, his character wasn't really all that well developed in the first movie, other than he has a tragic past and he shoot sheep. I feel like they realized right away they wrote themselves in a corner. For some reason, they wanted to make that change, but then when they got to this film, they were like, well, in the book, Mike is the one who stays behind, so well, whatever, just give it to him again, whatever. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense in our new continuity. Whatever, it's from the book, so it makes sense. And that's another thing that I can complain about, is that in the first movie, no one says beep beep Richie, except for Pennywise. And in the book and in the miniseries, it's because whenever Richie's going too far with the jokes, they always say, hey, shut up, Richie. Beep beep Richie was their way of doing that. And they explain that in that. But in the new movie, no one says it except for Pennywise, and he does like a little movement when he says it. So I was able to figure, like, okay, Richie's fear is clowns, so him, like, doing beep beep Richie like a clown's nose, like beep beep, you know, I can get that. But then in this one, Bill Hader tells a joke at one point, and then Bev just goes beep beep Richie. But it's like, you have not established that that's a thing. Like, we get it is because that's a thing in the miniseries and that's in the book. We recognize the line, but my point is, no one in this film's continuity has addressed that. It's just that you needed to have something, another reference to the book in there somewhere. So just throw it in. It doesn't matter, like, again, similar to Mike's character thing, doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense in the new continuity we've established, as long as you understand it's from the book. we're good, right? It seems like that's also their approach to how they treated certain characters in this film. That if you know the book, then you don't need that much new. Like, we get that Bill's a writer, and they pretty much just show Bill working on a Hollywood set just to establish a running joke that he can't write a good ending. Get it? It's just like Stephen King. If you didn't understand that that was supposed to be a Stephen King-esque character in the original, then here you're definitely gonna get that, especially at one scene in particular, which I won't lie, it was a funny joke, funny scene that they had later on in the film too, but that's pretty much the only thing that opening scene with him is meant to establish. He works on Hollywood, people make fun of him for his endings, and he gets into an argument with his wife, but then he gets the call from Mike, and then we forget all about that except for the joke part. The wife, who is a big part of the book and miniseries, is now cut out to the point where you didn't even need to show her, but they needed to anyway. He's just gonna make out with Bev later in the love triangle anyways, and you're not even going to bring it up. Like, they literally don't mention, hey, I've got a wife. Maybe I shouldn't be smacking lips with Jessica Chastain. They don't even mention her at that point. So it's kind of like, it's a weird disorienting feeling that you get with some of these things. Like, they set up certain things that you expect to happen, but then they just don't. It's not developed well enough. And you're just kind of like, okay, but I thought you were gonna... whatever. Bev's introduction is just she immediately gets a call in the middle of the night and she's starting to pack and the husband shows up, and not for 1 second did I not buy the whole, oh, I totally understand that you're going to meet with your friends. Like, as soon as he grabs her arm and just like, now I'm gonna do cartoony domestic abuse acting, I was like, yeah, okay. I literally like audibly groaned. I was like, oh, here we go again. Like in the miniseries, at least they had scenes early on like, hey, I'm working with my husband, everything's good. So when he does start to smack her around, it's like a surprise, like, oh, poor Bev. In this one, they don't give you that time at all. So when he, of course, as soon as he shows up, he's like in the dark, he's in the shadows. And it's like, oh, I know where this is going. Not just because I recognize the other source material, but if I was just to watch these films and not recognize, though, I'd just know instantly. And they don't even flesh that out either. Not in the miniseries, but in the book, that husband shows up later. And I thought maybe for a second they were gonna make some new changes and have him be more involved, since his scene was just so quick and done. Maybe he was gonna come back. Doesn't come back at all. And Bev kind of forgets about him pretty much. There should be something that's haunting Bev about this potential new romance she's gonna have with Bill, and maybe with Ben. She's like, but you know, I picked the wrong man because he was similar to my father. What if love isn't just for me? What's going on with my love life? Like something. But they don't. It's just like, oh, we just need to be in the love triangle now. Just forget about Bill's wife, forget about if Ben has met anyone recently, or forget about if Bev has an abusive husband that they never mention again. Just move on. Speaking of Ben, they barely show him off either. I like Jay Ryan as an actor. Obviously, I just said I liked everyone in this cast as a performer. Like, I thought they all did a really good job, but it's just the character writing. They don't give them much in these introduction scenes. These are, even though it's the same characters we know from the movie that we last saw 2 years ago, this is 27 years later. Things have changed, and you should try to explain them and try to work it out so we get to know these new versions of them. Don't give us like the basics of what you need to know and just be like, all right, they're off. Now they're going to remember their childhood and have flashbacks with the younger kids. So the Ben thing is just like he's on a business call over Skype, then he hangs up, and then he gets a call from Mike, and that's it. Like, they don't bother to explain like, oh, he's so important in the business field, but oh, he's never found a new love, or maybe he's tried to, but he just can't stop thinking about Bev. Nothing of the sort of any kind, nothing. Just he has never moved on, apparently. Like, I can't even pick up, like, has he tried to move on? Has he tried to forget about Bev entirely? Like, what? Don't know. I don't know. And speaking of those flashbacks, they cut to flashbacks with the younger kids because they were so popular in the first film. We should add in some new scenes to kind of, you know, add some more character stuff in this film. And for the most part, I thought those flashbacks worked for a purpose, and every single one of them was kind of like, all right, this is actually pretty neat, and I'm glad they're showing this because it adds a little bit more. But at first, I didn't notice the digital de-aging, and I was kind of looking for it because I read an article, like a friend of mine shared it to me, like, what do you think of this? And I was like, oh no, they're gonna digitally de-age these kids. Like, this sounds like a nightmare. But at first, I didn't notice, and I was like, okay, the people at Warner Brothers have nailed this. But then, as the scenes kept going, I started to notice how smooth some of their faces were, and Eddie in particular, just the voice is different, and something feels off about his face. And Richie Tozier, Finn Wolfhard has gotten taller, and the cheeks have gotten puffier on this digital DA. Like, whenever they cut to Finn Wolfhard, you notice his cheeks are puffier than normal. And I was like, oh no, this is not good. This is not good CGI. There's a lot of cool creature designs that show up. The CGI isn't entirely perfect for them, but for the most part, they're so quick, and you just, like, you get the idea of what they look like. I'm like, okay, I can let this slide a bit. Like, it probably doesn't look perfect if you hung on it too long, but you're just giving me the basic of what I need to see of them. So it's fun, like, it's a very quick thing to do, whatever, but the digital de-aging of these kids really stood out. But speaking of these creatures, this is another thing I have to mention, is that this movie has its moments. The third act is a great moment, and there's about like 3 scenes that I can say were pretty well executed all around. There's the attack in the beginning, there's a little girl like you've seen in the trailers where Pennywise goes, hello, and then there's the funhouse bit with James McAvoy and the little kid and Pennywise. Like, those 3 in particular, I thought, like, they did a really good job with that. Every other scare in this movie is kind of lame, and it's not really all that scary. It's honestly more so funny, but maybe that shouldn't be the case in a horror film that you're supposed to be frightened by, like, especially since it's dealing with childhood trauma. And a lot of it, like I said, this movie's pretty funny overall, like, when they're actually supposed to be telling jokes. There's a couple times where they turn fake jump scares into jokes. Like, the music's building up, like, oh, something creepy's gonna happen, and then it's a joke! It's a joke! A character's making a joke. And they do that quite a few times, and I was like, this is pretty lame. Like, I could see it, I could literally see it coming. A lot of the creatures they show, though cool looking, they aren't entirely scary, mainly because, you know, the visuals aren't perfect, so it's like, I'm more so just kind of laughing at these, you know, they're not even really all that scary, and it doesn't help that the majority of the second act is built around the same horror sequence. These guys have to remember their youth, they have to remember it so they can defeat Pennywise this time, and whenever they do, a character goes to a place, and they get a flashback, and it's like, oh, this happened off screen and we didn't even see it. Wow, this adds something new to the character. And then ends with a jump scare and you're like, oh my gosh, that was scary. And then it cuts back to the present, but then all of a sudden, the present day people start to get haunted and then they get jump scared too. Like, oh my god! It's the same structure for, like, each and every one of them, except for Bev, because that started up with, she remembered something about her father and was like, oh, that happened, ugh, gross. And then when she cuts back to the present, that's when the jump scares happen. But it's still the same structure. Like, something disturbed happens to the younger selves that they remember, and then they get jump scared once again at that exact moment. Ben gets jump scared pretty much twice when he's younger to make up for the older one not getting jump scared in that moment. But after going through those scenes, even though they do add different creatures and they add different characters, the fact that they're all structured the same makes it feel very repetitive. And after a while, you're just kind of like, oh, can we please just do something different? Like, you've got a lot of unique ideas for creatures to show up and monsters, but if you're just going to do the same thing and they're not even going to look all that good when they do show up, it looks like a cartoon show, then what's the point? It's hard though, because everything they reveal about these characters is pretty much essential, so you do need these scenes. It's just that at the end of the day, they needed to rework them so that they're not feeling like exactly the same thing. Also, Ben's actually isn't all that essential. Like, everyone else I can be like, okay, I understand why Bill's is here, I understand why Bev's is here, I understand Richie's and Eddie's, I know why these guys have their own separate sequences, and then they cut to Ben's, and it's like, what exactly are they revealing about Ben that we didn't already know? And I thought about it for a second, I was like, you know what? Literally nothing. And then he gets jump scared twice. And the thing about it that really bothered me this time is that in the first movie, Pennywise would spook them but let them get away because he's kind of like he's peppering them up. Like, you guys taste better when you're scared. So he's like, I'm gonna pepper you up with scares until the final point where I'm ready to eat you. So it kind of works then because they're kids, and what are kids gonna do, right? These guys are adults, and they managed to escape Pennywise many years ago. So the whole, I'm gonna jump scare you, but I'll just, like, run at you real quick and you'll be able to run away before I get you, doesn't work when it's for every single scene. And it seems like he's letting them get away. Like, I could just run up and eat Richie Tozier, who is literally trying to convince himself it's just a dream by closing his eye. I could just run up and bite his head off. But why would I do that when we could just have a jump scare scene where Pennywise shakes his head at the camera and character runs away completely safe? There's literally a moment in one of the flashbacks where a character is in a confined space, and they do a really lame cinematography thing where the camera's here, pan out, where's Pennywise? Comes back, oh, there he is in this space. I totally called it. This character can't fit in this confined space, by the way. It doesn't make sense, but whatever. Like, Pennywise is there. Pennywise has this kid in this confined area. He shouldn't be able to fit in or get out at this point. What is he doing except just making a face for the camera when it pans back? That's the face. And it's like, just bite him, kill him! You had, like, that was the thing, it's like, you added this, we didn't need to see it, but whatever, you're adding it for a scare. But now it makes Pennywise look even stupider. Like, he could kill these guys at any moment. Like, I started to notice that a lot. Like, Pennywise has a lot of great opportunities to get these guys, but he just doesn't? It made for a really lame experience. It wasn't like, I'm having fun with these sequences, it was more like, can you just do something new? You got a lot of cool ideas, but it's all coming about to be the exact same at the end of the day. And some of them we don't even need to see, but this movie is somehow 2 hours and 49 minutes. What should have been dedicated more to character development at the beginning and throughout is instead replaced with lame jump scares that are about the same for each and every scene. They bring back Henry Bowers. At first I was wondering how they're going to do that. He fell down a well head first, but it kind of explained it like Pennywise bringing him back. But then they don't really make a clear effort to really explain why certain things happened to him later, and just I really wasn't buying him this time around. It just really felt like we need a presence here, so just make it Henry Bowers. Like, that's the same in the book and the miniseries, it's fine. I thought they'd do something better than that, though, because each time they did it, it was just kind of like, Henry's there, but then he weakens one of them, but then, you know, they take care of it. I thought they were going to do something stronger this time around. They made that goofy, too, and it just got to the point where it kind of didn't make sense. A character does something, and you think, oh, this character's now going to get over this certain fear, but then the character just acts fearful later, and it works for that section only. But they had this one part that kind of clunks it also, and it's like, I wish you guys weren't messing up like this. And how they overall deal with Henry, like, I'm trying to pick apart, like, the logic of certain things they showed of him, and it didn't add up for me. And I was like, why isn't this happening? I have questions, and I don't feel like they're being answered, and if they are, it's probably because you're not focusing on it enough. To kind of wrap up certain things about this movie, I feel like it's also kind of weirdly edited. There's a moment where someone's choking like a monster, like, yeah, I'm getting over my fear, but then the monster pukes on them, and then Angel in the Morning starts playing for 3 seconds max, and you're kind of wondering why? What's the reference? What's the joke? Is the song playing on a radio somewhere? No, it's just playing for no reason, out of nowhere. And I was like, is this supposed to be funny? Because it's not funny. It's not even scary now. It wasn't even all that scary to begin with because it was so predictable what was going to happen. But now it's especially not scary because you're playing this music. And there's also a moment where I thought they were going to, like, there's a character that gets dragged underwater and a bunch of characters are going in, one stays up above the water, and I thought they were going to do, like, cut to the character or worrying where they are, like, are you guys coming back up, where are you? Cut to underwater rescue part. But they just stayed on this one character, and a monster is holding on to this character that they dragged under the water. And you're wondering, how are they gonna, like, get this monster off this character? They don't even show you. You're just supposed to watch this one character be afraid, like, where are my friends? Where are they at? And then boom, 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 all of them shoot up and they're all fine. Like, okay. At the end of the day, I can admire this film for many reasons. Andy Muschietti is clearly a talent, and he's got a lot of great ideas. As seen by a lot of the things in this film, the cast is all doing a good job. Bill Hader and James Ransone are really bringing it their all too. They are easily the standouts, and certain things when they get to the third act are fantastic. It's a great third act, and they close out certain things in a way that is satisfying, and you're like, okay, I care about this, and I'm glad that they went with this. But certain things they introduced earlier get quickly forgotten about, and they're barely developed to begin with. So certain things are just kind of satisfying on the most basic level. Like, well, I only really care because I cared about it in the first movie, and now they're doing it here, so I'm satisfied now. But it's not really complete satisfaction because you're watching a film that's very jumbled and kind of messy with how they're structuring certain things, how they're writing certain things. Overall, like, I can look up to Bill Skarsgård's performance as Pennywise any day. He's fantastic, and I think he's a force to be reckoned with in the acting field. I think he needs more roles immediately, and I think all these actors are great, and I think Andy Muschietti can make some really good films. I like Mama enough, and I think Chapter 1 is really good. I thought they did a really good job with that despite its issues. This one, it's definitely a step down, and it's easily my least favorite Andy Muschietti film so far. I hope he's got a better success with The Flash. I hope he doesn't get kicked off that project or something like that. I was just really let down by this one. What was supposed to be kind of this epic kind of horror conclusion to the It series that they're now bringing back, and they did a really good job with in 2017. Instead, they got a lot of things right, but there's also a bunch of stuff that bogs it down too much. And me speaking personally, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, as a big fan of what they did with the last film, as a big fan of horror films, I just really wasn't digging what they did. It's another movie this year, another horror film that a bunch of people are liking on Rotten Tomatoes and on online circles, and I'm just kind of towards. That's what happened with Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark about a month ago, and now that's happening with this film. I think this is better than Scary Stories just by a bit, but both of them have a lot of the same issues. I'm gonna give It Chapter 2 a C+. A lot of things let me down, but a lot of things I thought they did get right. The acting is all really good, and Andy Muschietti clearly has proven that he has a lot of great ideas, but for some reason, a lot of those great ideas kind of get lost in the shuffle for a movie that's almost 3 hours. Barely anything feels developed, which is really awkward. They do get a lot of character arcs right, like near the second act, but even in that second act there's a lot of repetitive jump scares, structured sequences that really take you out of the mood too. Like, well, I can enjoy how you're shooting this, I can enjoy like the music by Wallfish, but if everything's structured the same and certain things don't need to be there, then what's the point? But if you've seen that Chapter 2, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.